Hello, family, and welcome to another episode of Role Model Experts Cafe. I am your host, Dr. L, the Parent Whisperer, and today with me, I have an amazing gentleman. His name is Mr. Jay Rooke. Did I say that correctly, Jay?
You did, Dr. L.
Very cool. Now, I've had an opportunity to see him during our networking event. I think the topic that he discusses is very important. So here he is. I asked him to come to the cafe and tell you guys more about himself and how he got involved in all of this. And thank you guys for tuning in and being part of our event. So, Jay, I really appreciated that you took the time to set this time up for us to share your expertise. How did you get involved with what you do? And tell us a little bit more about it.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, Dr. L. I really appreciate to get to speak to your community and excited to be a part of it all. So my story is an interesting one in so much as I think many entrepreneurs, I sort of accidentally fell into what I'm doing right now, which is running gonzoparenting.com. And it's a community for parents that are currently in the thick of it, that want to eschew perfect parenting and embrace the chaos and the comedy of what's going on, and have some fun with it and learn to support each other in a different way. The focus of the community is to get some laughs in and get that community connection around other like-minded parents that share that sort of parenting view. As you know, many of us become quite isolated once we become parents, and finding people that share our values and the way we view parenting can be a challenge. So that's the current community that's going on. We've got a podcast, we've got a comic strip that we write on a weekly basis, which has been super fun. And the way that I got into it is that I'm the father of 7-year-old boy-girl twins. And I was an only child raised by a single mom. So prior to having my own kids, I had next to zero experience around children ever. And then into the world come these two twin tornadoes here. And what I started to realize was that between being an entrepreneur and trying to keep my own business going, plus being through the thick of COVID, plus realizing I just felt quite overwhelmed as a father and wondering, how to do all of this. I started to write about it quite a bit. And the more I did that and sharing my own journey and my own challenges, the more I found other parents reaching out and saying, this really speaks to me and resonates. And I'm going through the same thing. And thank you for sharing that. So that's kind of how the gist of the community came together. And I'd say our goal is to do the personal development work that we need to do to become the mom or dad we wish we had.
Right. I love it. Thank you for doing all of that. And it's really important because when you become a parent, I know you know this, um, what ends up happening is you realize that the best way to teach them about the world and the rules in it is to actually follow those yourself
Yes.
and lead by example. So this is great. That it's great that you actually have a community, because I know that people move all the time. People relocate, and it becomes difficult for them to keep in touch with the community that they might have otherwise grown up with or have been part of. And when something like that happens, then you need new support. It's very important for us to be part of a community as human beings, and no place is it more evident than when it comes to raising a family. So thank you
100.
for doing that. It actually reminded me when you said you were a single child and then now you have twins. It reminded me of, I think it was a comedian that was saying that unless you have multiple kids, like 2 kids or more, it doesn't really count, because you will never hear in a single family, is like a single child family, that I did not do it, because if something's broken, you knew who had done it.
Totally. That's great. That's great. Absolutely. And then the double challenge of, I think siblings in general are good criminal masterminds and work together to counter the parents. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in zone defense, if you will.
Right, absolutely. In fact, in your case with twins, you probably have to be a mind reader too, because they read each other's minds.
Definitely. Yes. Yes. Yeah.
So very cool. All right, not getting off topic. Tell me this. What are some of the things that you have seen as challenges in your community that typically pop up? Either people who are coming into the network complaining about, or when they come into the community, they're struggling with in order to fit in.
Yeah, I appreciate the question. I think the top two are that that sense of overwhelm and not knowing where to turn to, and realizing, especially with what we've gone through the last few years, that the world is changing so rapidly, and we all know that it's just radically different than we were children, and so we're raising kids in a world that's never existed before. So to start, it's a huge task. Then there's this huge challenge going on, and what I'll book in that with as the second biggest thing is doing the healing that we needed to do for ourselves. It's sort of a rite of passage, I think, as parents, that we uh, injure our kids in one way or another, and it's a constant course correction that we go on back and forth from grandparent to parent and then children again. But recognizing that perhaps some of our parents weren't as deliberate as we had wished, or didn't have the tools for themselves that they were going through, and obviously doing the best that they could at that time. And so how do we identify those things for ourselves so that we can be happy, healthier parents? Because it's my belief that happy, healthy parents have the best opportunity to raise happy, healthy children. And with that, we can change the world, quite seriously. So it's a huge opportunity. And then the gift to ourselves of doing that work, so that we're not walking around as a wounded warrior and passing these things on. And I think most importantly, so that we can enjoy our parenting journey and not constantly have it be a cross that we're bearing.
Right. I totally agree. I like to call that group of people that are tuned into this message that you just shared as active parenting.
Yeah.
And truly for me, that process I feel like has been one of the most fulfilling periods of my life. Not just the fact that I became a father, but the fact that I have started on this journey of improving myself and leading by example, and knowing that I have to leave a legacy for my
Yeah.
children, basically, and hoping that they can pass that on to the next generation as a result. So I totally agree with that. So and then here's the other thing. You talked about overwhelm, and there's overwhelm, and then there's healing, right? And we talked about the stuff that happened the past couple of years. One of the things that nowadays becomes an issue is, you have this generational gap, and the fact that generations are changing faster and faster. I believe nowadays is like every 3 4 years we have a new
Yeah.
generation that's coming in thanks to technology
Yeah.
that is completely different than the previous one. So in your experience, how are parents coping with this? Because that means that how you raise one child compared to another one that is a sibling might be totally different,
Yeah.
just because they're 3 or 4 years apart.
Absolutely. And I think one of the joys of being a parent is getting to watch your children grow up through your own eyes and remembering your own childhood. But then we don't have that contextual relevance anymore because their experience is not the same that ours was. And so I think what we're seeing coming off of all of this is certainly a lot of chronic PTSD in a lot of individuals that, they made it through, they survived, they've held it together, and they think that everything's back to normal, but it's not. And so there's a lot of cleanup for us to do. And again, going back to that healing point, and how to sort of make peace with some of that overwhelm, and how do we move our parenting context or viewpoint from compartmentalizing our parenting. So I'm at work for these hours, I'm parenting for these hours, and I'm maybe social for these hours. And in my experience, when we're doing that, we always feel like we're at the wrong place at the wrong time, and it feels constantly overwhelming. Again, just adds to those chronic stress levels that makes everything harder. So part of the game for us, in my opinion, is how do we move from compartmentalizing to harmonizing, so that these things all look like the same way most of the time through. And yeah, there's the break points where we're putting different hats on, but not having it be that radical gear shift.
I really like it. I compartmentalizing instead of harmonizing, or the other way,
Yeah.
harmonizing instead of compartmentalizing. So how do we harmonize? Give me one or two tips for our audience members where they might be able to harmonize their life together or in their own life. And in the process, just saying harmonizing feels healing to me. So,
100%. Yeah, absolutely. And when we have that divide in ourselves, I feel it's like tough to show up as our best self in any of those arenas. So two tips on that would be, you mentioned one of them, which is walking the talk. And so instead of allowing the kids to constantly be on screen time or whatever that might be, I know a lot of parents, myself included, can often play the martyr game, where we're up prioritizing our kids' needs in front of ours and not doing the self-care that we need to be safe and centered. And so if we can enlist our kids in that process and actually talk about it, which will lead to part two, which is treating them like actual adults, but weaving that in. So as an example, it might be, hey, let's all meditate for 5 minutes together, or maybe the kids have to meditate for 1 minute and the parent does it for five. And just starting to weave those things in so that the kids see that as normal, healthy practice and what to do. As an example, when I take the kids to school or summer camp during our morning drop-offs, we all set intentions before they get out of the car. And it's just become a thing for them that then becomes a practice as a family, that again starts to make it less compartmentalized. And then the other one that I was saying is around treating the kids, like full stakeholders in the family versus, lesser beings sometimes, though, that we can look at kids. And the more we can make them part of the family management and the family conversations, I've noticed like their conversation levels up level quite quickly around understanding what's going on and getting it. And then so as a result, there's less resistance in the family when we do those types of disciplines. We're talking about, what we're going to do this weekend or how we're spending our time.
Wow. Jay, I really like you right now because you mentioned three things that I think are really important. And at the same time, I put a check mark next to each of them because we actually do that in our family.
Nice. Yeah.
I really emphasize to the kids that they need to step into their day rather than fall into it.
Yeah.
So setting the intentions and meditating and prayers in the morning to calm themselves and figure out what it is that they want out of their day. And then also making sure that they are part of a team as opposed to somebody who's told what to do, having an opportunity to lead their own life and be a leader in their own life instead of being told what to do and becoming a follower as a result, even if they're doing everything right. I
Yep.
always tell them, like, if I'm telling you what to do, then you are doing it, but you're still a follower. I want to make
Yes.
sure you lead your life and you make those decisions for yourself.
Yeah, and then as we think about where we're going next in the future, how do we turn those our parenting into cultivating leadership capacities for our children? Because again, they're going to be navigating quite a wild ride in whatever life looks like, 15, 20 years from now, with all the change that's going to go on from between now and then. And I think a big part of what you're talking about is learning how to navigate our own fear as parents. We want so much for them. We want to make sure we're doing the right thing, and sometimes that can come across as a top-down, more authoritarian, command and control model of do this, do that, and we're not serving them. And if we can recognize that that's coming from a place of fear, and learning how to start to recognize that love is the answer for everything, and that's always a work in practice for me. But I think that's when we find most of our solutions, and usually the cleanest ones that drop into place most easily.
Right. Isn't it amazing? It always comes back to the same things. We already know it, but
Yeah.
implementing it in those juicy, fine little details is the really important part. So I really want to be part of this community now. So tell us more about how to connect with you.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I would say the easiest way is to go to gonzoparenting.com, and you can find all the information there. There's a link to the Facebook community, our comic strips, the podcast. We've got some funnies there. I've got a download that talks about how I used to be a correctional officer during my summers in college, and I talk about how raising twins is very similar to working as a correctional officer at times. So that'd probably be the best place to go. And then if you're kicking around on Facebook, we've got a really strong and engaged, vibrant Facebook community. So if you go to Facebook and then just type in Gonzo Parenting, that's the private community, and those are the two best ways to connect.
All right. Well, I just learned something new about you. So good to know. Thanks, Jay. Guys, make sure that you click in the description box. I have a big link there. There's going to be a lot of information there. Make sure you connect with Jay. Make sure you become part of the community, and also role model and teach the kids that it's okay not to have the answers. It's okay to ask for help, and it's okay to connect, that we regularly need to connect to other people. And that was the purpose of internet until all this other stuff came about and distracted us. So let's connect, show the kids that they're not alone, and that there's support for everything. And thank you for joining us. If you haven't already done so, make sure you click on subscribe so you get notified of all the experts that come to this channel, share their expertise, share gifts, and make sure you check Jay out. Jay, that was an awesome interview. I really appreciate you showing up here, taking time out of your busy schedule. Any final words for our audience members before we finish?
That everyone needs to be laughing more. I think we all got so serious with our parenting, and obviously some tough last few years. And so being around other parents that are laughing, and when you need to blow off steam and think you're going crazy and need to share the story about how one of your kids just shaved the cat or something like that, like this is the place to come and do it, and get some Schadenfreude in, and laughs in with other parents.
I love that. I love that. Absolutely. Yep. Cheers to that. See you guys later. I appreciate you.